I just wanted to inform everyone that after talking to my family, my most senior advisors, Savannah and Theodore, and of course Genevieve, that we've decided to put my name in again for Mayor of Brampton. And I love serving the city of Brampton. This is truly an incredible place to live. This want to add a few things? It really is a mosaic of the world, and you get to meet people from every culture, every background, and it has been the greatest privilege to serve the city over the last 4 years, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years. We've done we've done a lot of great work together at City Hall. We landed the long overdue new hospital. It's $1 billion investment in our city. $1 billion investment in our city that was desperately needed through our advocacy. A new med school for the community that we're elated about. A new transit facility. We'll be the first big city in Canada with a fully electrified transit fleet. We've got the cybersecurity campus. Major new economic development projects. You look at MDA, where we're going to have literally 800 rocket science jobs. It's an exciting time to be in Brampton. I'm looking forward to throwing my heart into making sure that Brampton can be even stronger in the years to come. And I want to thank all those who encouraged me, sent me notes over the last few days saying, make sure you put your name in again. And I promised we would make a decision, and we have, and I'm excited to serve. And I would just note, obviously, there's a lot of issues that I care about on a national level, Bill 21 being one of them, where I spoke out and our council spoke out, that no one should ever lose their job in this country because of their faith. And for me, that's a Canadian value. And I will continue to speak loudly for values I believe in, and religious freedom is one of those. And it's particularly important to Brampton because we are the very definition of multiculturalism in this city, and we live in harmony, and we love each other and our neighbors. And when I see that diminished, I will never hesitate to speak out. But my entire focus in the years ahead is going to make sure that we have Brampton in a strong position, that we continue to make sure our city gets our fair share, that we're able to get good paying jobs in our community. This council was able to freeze taxes for the first time in 19 years. 19 years. And for me, being tax competitive is very important. It's going to continue to be a priority. I'd also say, I hear from residents that challenges around public safety are very important. We've seen real growth in auto thefts, and I'm going to do whatever I can to support the Peel Police to make sure they have the tools to keep our community safe. I'm excited for the challenges that lie ahead, grateful for the support in the city. I've been going to events recently, and everywhere I went, people were encouraging me to put my name forward. And I want to say to the residents, whether it's at the farmers market, a kabaddi tournament, whether it was during Eid, the feedback you gave me meant a lot to my family and to myself, and it's because of the residents of Brampton that we're putting our name in for another 4 years, and excited for the challenge that lies ahead. And I know Theodore and Savannah and Gigi are very excited that their dad's home here in Brampton, ready to serve in public service. And I want to thank Councillor Palesci, Councillor Santos, Councillor Vasante, who are here with me today. And it's a privilege to live in the greatest city in our country and ready to serve again. Thank you very much. So, on a national level, one of the reasons I put my name forward is I didn't want to see the Conservative Party take the route of the extreme right, the Ted Cruz or Donald Trump approach. I don't believe that's what is the best path forward for Canada. I love serving as mayor of Brampton. It was a big sacrifice to be away from my family, but I believed that pitch needed to be heard, that the Conservative Party of Canada doesn't need to replicate the politics of the US. We don't need to have a polarized debate. I may be biased on this because I adored our former Premier Bill Davis, that I believe reflected a different version of.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel News Daily live stream. It's Monday, which means I'm your host, Sheila Gunread, and I'm joined by my friend in Calgary, Adam Sos. Adam, how's it going?
Oh, it's going absolutely wonderful. No complaints. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. It would appear, if people have been watching before we came on the stream, if people had joined to watch the Patrick Brown live stream about his future, my prophecy, my predictions have been fulfilled. I said that he was going to run for mayor again because he just feels that it's his entitlement. He must be elected to be in charge of something. That's like his reason for existence. And even after all the scandals, even after the scandals, the reason he had to, that he was kicked out of the Conservative Party leadership race, and then basically proroguing city council to avoid answering questions about, were you paying city staff while they were on the payroll of the city to work on your campaign? He's been canceling city council meetings to avoid answering that question. And now he comes out and announces that he's going to run for mayor. I mean, just the gall of this guy, he won't go away.
How similar is this guy to Justin Trudeau in this like perpetual, just like, I can't be wrong, I don't make mistakes. He's just dodging the fact that he was thrown out for all of his continued sneaky Patrick Brown behavior. And then he comes out not to address it, but to be like, we're so excited to be moving forward. And this is the next decision that I've made, the next step for me and my family. Listen, you can criticize Jason Kenney here in Alberta just about as much as you want. But when he sensed the tide had turned and he was no longer wanted, he probably could have held on to power. He probably could have done what Pat Brown is doing. Some argue the fact that he's carrying on his interim. He is doing that a bit, but at least he had the decency to say, you know what, I'm not their guy anymore. I'm going to mosey on. Pat Brown, not even an ounce of that humility. So it's unbelievable, man. Hopefully the residents of Brampton know a little bit better, but I don't know. This guy's just one of those guys who just doesn't seem to go away.
We'll talk about him a little bit more here, but I should tell everybody what we're doing here. And as it is on some Mondays around here, the show today is brought to you by our friends at the Alberta Prosperity Project. This is the Rebel News Daily live stream, wherein we talk about the news of the day, sometimes as the news is breaking, with the case of Patrick Brown. And it gives us a chance to interact with each other. It's sometimes the news is best talked about unscripted. And it gives you a chance to support the work that we do completely willingly. So we're currently streaming on YouTube, but if we get to a point where there are things that, we can't talk about on YouTube because it's not the public square of ideas anymore, it's a censorship platform. So if we get to a point where we're getting into the red zone on YouTube, don't worry, because we're still streaming on Getter. And if you watch us on Rumble and Odyssey, you can also support the work that we do out of the goodness of your heart, because you want us to keep going and doing that work. You can leave us a Rumble rant, and that's their paid chat, and we'll leave it on, or we'll read it on air. And on Odyssey, their paid chat is called the Hyper Chat. So if you leave us a rant or Hyper Chat, we'll show it on screen, and Adam or me will do our very best to answer your question, comment, or hear your story idea. So that's it. I don't know if you caught that, Adam, but Patrick Brown said that he doesn't want to, take the conservative movement in the direction of Ted Cruz.
Why?
Or Donald Trump. And I'm like, so you don't want to be successful?
Conservative.
You don't want you don't want to win? Because
Yeah.
Ted Cruz, he's a pretty reliable winner in Texas. People really seem to like him. He's actually a constitutional traditionalist, and he's also got a very successful podcast. So I don't know. I feel like saying we don't want to take the party in the direction of these successful Republicans. I think that's a bad argument to make.
I mean, Pat Brown makes Jean Charest look like Ted Cruz. This guy was
Right.
going to. This guy, I mean, if Justin Trudeau is the patriarch of Western separatism, which is kind of a joke going around because under Justin Trudeau's reign, we've seen Western separatism and the significant push for sovereignty,
Yep.
independence, more rights just skyrocket under Justin Trudeau. Well, if Pat Brown became the leader, he would be just as bad towards the West. And I think that would definitely be the straw that would break the camel's back, so to speak. So, I mean, there's a
Olivia,
few
sorry,
other
Adam,
people.
to cut you off. Sorry to cut you off. Olivia says we should go back to Patrick Brown live.
Okay, let's do it.
That we're ready to serve, continue to serve the city of Brampton.
Mr. Mayor, your name's still going to be on the ballot. You did sign up a lot of members. There's a potential that your name will have you checked off a lot. If not, you might even win because you're not signed up compared to the name. What would your thoughts be to those people that's checked off your name?
So there are many new members of the party who joined the party for the first time thinking that the party could take a different approach. And for them, they've lost their voice, they've lost their opportunity. But that is a decision that the establishment of the Conservative Party made. And I'm moving on from that chapter and now just focused on making sure that I can give every opportunity to the residents of Brampton.
Mayor, just for the record, still maintaining no wrongdoing whatsoever in the federal Conservative Leadership Party race?
There was a reason that was manufactured, and I think the legal team that is dealing with the party was very clear that there was no wrongdoing, there was no breach of Elections Canada, and I have complete confidence in Marie Hennon and her team that that will be made abundantly clear.
Given your history with the Conservatives, have you given any thought to leaving them as a party?
Well, right now, my focus is going to be on the city of Brampton, and that does mean working with all parties. Over the last 4 years, when I was removed from partisan politics, because municipal politics is nonpartisan, I had an enjoyable time working with all parties, and my goal will be in the years ahead to work with any party, whether it's green, orange, blue, or red, whoever can serve the city of Brampton, and that will be my approach. I'm ready to sit down with anyone that can put Brampton in a better position.
That's his political policy as well. Where we're going to put him in a better position. Let's sit down.
So Jean Charest is a good friend. I believe he shares many common values, and I did share with my team that they're certainly have my blessing to get involved with any candidate that they believe shares the same inclusive values that I do.
Will you support the forensic investigations by council currently underway, any expansion of them, and the full disclosure in public of the findings, such as the Brampton Youth scandal?
So we do need to have an investigation into why the Integrity Commissioner was fired for doing her job, why the city solicitor was fired for doing his job. I believe residents of Brampton will render their verdict on what I believe was inappropriate conduct by some councillors. The Superior Court has clearly said that they were wrong, and I certainly am going to support investigations into that disappointing behavior.
What about the
Yeah.
Brampton Youth office?
Are there any other questions?
Can you explain why your media spending, your office's social media spending went up in the months of March and April?
Are there any other
I
questions?
think that's important to answer.
To go back to an earlier
yeah.
question, is there any reason that people of Brampton should not believe that running for mayor is a Plan B backup for you?
So, it was the residents of Brampton that encouraged me to try to bring a Bill Davis style approach to the federal Conservative Party. And it's the residents of Brampton who have said if the party doesn't want to go down that path, then come and serve our city. And so it's the residents of Brampton that I'm taking my encouragement to. And I feel very optimistic that we're going to have a great result in October that will put the city in a very strong position.
If you win re-election, I think some questions have been ignored. I don't know where they're from, but if you become mayor again, would you shut down any audits into any financial activity from you on behalf at Brampton City Hall, possibly connected to the federal race? Would you let those audits go ahead?
So first of all, those are ludicrous claims that have no credibility, pushed by political adversaries. Let me be very clear. We're going to insist on an investigation to the wrongdoings of the councillors that removed the integrity commissioner. For people that make nonsensical arguments about Brampton's lobbying to get a med school, I am proud that Brampton landed a med school. And it was the Premier himself, Premier Ford, when he called me to tell me the news the day before the provincial budget, and he said, in terms of your Brampton U proposal, you're not going to get a university today, but how does a med school sound? And I said, I'm elated. And I'll be proud to run on the fact that our council unanimously supported a proposal to bring a university to our city. We spent less than the previous council on that advocacy, but we actually got results. I will never, ever be disappointed in the fact that this council delivered a medical school to our city. And I want to actually give credit to Councillor Santos and Councillor Singh. If it wasn't for their relentless advocacy in terms of getting on Brampton, if it wasn't for their relentless advocacy, there'd be no med school in Brampton. This is the first new med school in the GTA in 100 years, and we're proud of it in Brampton.
Yeah. For Radio Canada,
Sure.
your future in politics, and you would include as
Sure.
sponsored sheet.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Maintenant, je suis fier d'être ici à Brampton et de d'accueillir pour mon ville ici à Brampton.
Okay, that's good. I was just curious if he was going to say something ridiculous about Rebel News. Just on that,
he's pretending that didn't happen.
on the integrity commissioner scandal, this is something that has been glossed over, I think, and it should be much more in the spotlight. I can't believe, given what sort of shook out with the integrity commissioner in Brampton, that he even still decided to run. And I can't believe that was not a bigger campaign issue. I'll just give everybody the Coles Notes version. The Pointer did a really great job on this. Brampton fires integrity commissioner Maniza Sheikh despite legal threat. So, following 2 hours of closed session discussions Friday, Brampton Council, this is way back in March, by the way. So, you know what? Was David Menzies asleep at the switch? This seems like a story he would have been all over too. Anyway, Brampton councillors voted to terminate the contract of the city's integrity commissioner. The move comes 2 days after closed meeting discussions regarding the election, or the integrity commissioner, spilled over into public session with councillors Michael Paleshi and Rowena Santos. Those are the ones that he just congratulated for supporting him, by the way, revealing that others had moved to end Sheikh's employment with the city. Their disclosure, by the way, appeared to violate closed session rules that prohibit divulging most communication that takes place in camera. After learning that, this is crazy, she billed Brampton taxpayers $321,600 in 2020, her first full year on the job, and then $340,000 in 2021 for the part-time role she maintains while simultaneously working as a partner in her law firm. Gets better. Gets better. Following Paleshi's statements, Sheikh contacted all the members on council to intimidate them, it would seem. First in email correspondence, then through a letter threatening legal action should they vote to end her relationship with the city. So she's trying to intimidate elected council members. Then she said, in the letter it said, I have every intention of litigating any potential illegal decision made tomorrow and holding the city and individuals of council responsible for any damages that may ensue as a result of the unlawful termination of my contract. Sheikh said in an email to all councillors obtained by the Pointer. The motion to end the contract, brought forward Friday in a special meeting by Councillor Martin Medeiros, carried 5-3, with councillors Medeiros, Doug Willens, Charmaine Williams, Pat Fortini, and Gurpreet Dillon in favor, while councillors Paul Vicente, Michael Paleshi, and Harkirat Singh voting against. and again, Patrick Brown seems really uptight about the integrity commissioner being booted, but he wasn't even in that vote. This gets better though, because this is so like perfectly sneaky Patrick Brown. Can we put this back up? Let's keep going. The conduct of these council members raises a substantial concern about conflict of interest and procedural fairness. Councillor Martin Medeiros told the Pointer that he and Councillor Pat Fortini each received separate anonymous complaints against them Thursday morning, the day after the procedural action was taken to set in motion the dismissal of Sheikh. The timing of our complaints is pretty obvious as to what certain members of council have been trying to do. You're not even allowed to file an anonymous complaint. He questioned why some members are so concerned about bringing in a new integrity commissioner. Individuals who fill these roles change all the time. I understand this is part of an intimidation campaign, as today's decision shows. A majority of the council members will not be intimidated by other council members in our responsibility to represent in the interest of Brampton taxpayers. All the members who voted against terminating Sheikh's contract are aligned with Brown, who has been criticized for allowing Sheikh to rule on complaints against him. This is where we get into sneaky Patrick Brown stuff and why someone with the questionable integrity should probably not be your elections or your integrity commissioner. As the two are linked through past connections, naturally. Sheikh's husband's company was paid to do work for the Ontario PCs when Brown was the party leader, and she publicly came out in Brown's defense when he faced allegations of sexual misconduct that led to his downfall from provincial politics. Brown denies the allegations. Brown and Sheikh have appeared publicly together at events, and he uses a picture of the two of them together at the podium of one such outing for a previous political campaign website. Well, there she is. We don't need to hear about Duff Conacher. He's a union activist, but blah, 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 blah. And then, of course, as we scroll down, they go back to, I think that she's the integrity commissioner, however, that ruled that Patrick Brown didn't really do anything wrong when we, okay, so the hockey bag, it's in the caption here, the hockey bag next to Patrick Brown in the Rebel News video, it was filled with equipment and it had Patrick Brown's name on it. But Maniza Sheikh, the integrity commissioner that was just filed, is the one that accepted Brown's explanation that it was someone else's bag, even though the players were already in their equipment when Brown arrived late, and it literally had his name on the bag. This is the woman. And so and she's like billing almost $400,000 or $350,000 for a part-time job. And she's linked to Brown through her husband. She's appearing in his campaign literature. The counselors are like, this is the opposite of integrity. And she goes on this intimidation campaign in the fiefdom of Patrick Brown of Brampton. And he is today defending her at the podium. This is why people don't want him around. He's so sneaky. Everything he touches just gets corrupted.
His campaigns may as well be how dumb are you? Like anyone voting for this guy at this point, he's a caricature. Like he makes Trudeau look like not a half bad guy. If I had to pick who to have a beer with, it would be a tough draw because Trudeau at least acknowledges that he is a snowflake liberal, whatever you want to call him. He does that to a horrible extent, but he's upfront about it. Patrick Brown continues to parade around as a conservative, and there's nothing particularly conservative about his politics. In fact, when there are conservative politicians, he shuns them and he tries to emulate the great heroes of conservatism like Erin O'Toole. Oh wait, no, they absolutely basically ended conservatism, and now people like Pierre Poilievre, Maxime Bernier, some of the leadership candidates, very much more along the lines of Ted Cruz, are bringing conservatism back. But this guy, it's unbelievable that this guy carries on. And when he answered that question about whether this was a plan B, of course it was. He wants to get the hell out of Brampton. He literally wanted to get the hell out of Brampton. He tried provincial politics. He's tried federal politics. He's like, no, I always wanted to be here. I'll settle for being mayor of your town. I mean, frankly, the way things are going, people in cities in this country, for some reason, vote for abusive leadership, the same way Alberta stays in an abusive relationship with Ottawa. I don't know why we do it, but I sure hope that the people in Brampton wake up and smell the fresh air, maybe smell a little coffee while they're at it, come to their senses. because this is what this guy does. He gets caught over and over and over. I don't know why he's being taken seriously as a politician at all, because he is just the worst. He's a caricature of bad, corrupt politics.
I just don't know why. Like, does he not have somebody around him who says, you know what, Patrick, let's just go into lobbying or something. You'll make decent money, but we need to get your face away from these cameras and you need to get your family away from this. You are out of control. It's like he's addicted to being elected to something and then being in charge. But once he gets there, he just corrupts everything he touches. It's like he's human mold. You just touch it and then the mold's on it.
It's why he wants to be in power and why he needs to get elected, though. Like, this political class with all these ethics violations, Justin Trudeau, like you can look right now, and we can probably let people know Pat King is going to be released on very strict bail conditions. But you look at Pastor Archer Pavlovsky, you look at Tamara Leach, who by the time her bail hearing comes up will have spent 48 days overall cumulatively behind bars by July 25th. You look at the treatment those people are getting. Most of these politicians have done far worse things repeatedly, and that's even only on the front of COVID-19 infractions. Like they're categorically worse, but we live in this society where for some reason politicians are exempt from the same standards. In fact, they're exempt from more standards than would land you and I in jail. It's absolutely shocking to see that this is happening here, but this is why this guy wants to be in power. Once you get a taste of this, make a call and make a ticket go away. The laws don't apply to you. You can write everything off. You can expense these jet trips, all of this stuff. Like, there's almost nothing in the corporate world. You can make more money. Don't get me wrong, but you can't just do this blanket absurd spending, exempt from the law, do whatever you want, power grabbing nonsense. And it's insane that we've come this far, that we're seeing cities spending so much money, governments provincially spending so much money. Obviously, the federal government under Justin Trudeau, the absolute worst. But these people should not have access to resources so excessively that they can do these insane things they're doing.
It's almost worse than Justin Trudeau. And I can't even believe I'm going to say this, because Justin Trudeau actually sort of leads with his chin on this stuff, where he just says, so I did it. So what are you going to do to me? He, like, he does blackface, and
I think he led with his chin into the barber too. But anyways, that's another story.
Yeah, no, that's another thing too. His barber is obviously a conservative voter out to get him. That's my theory on that.
I think you're right though. Sorry, I think you're right though. It's worse.
Yeah, I think Justin Trudeau, he does not deny that he is corrupt and that he is unethical and that he's done blackface. He just sort of says,
you guys are still going to vote for me. I don't care.
He just says, you know what? I've got 1, 2, 3. I mean, they are Roman numeraling his ethics reports at this point. And he just says, well, what are you going to do? $300 fine? Whatever. Yeah, sure, I did blackface 1, 2, maybe 3 times, but you know what? It's a learning experience for all of us. That's one step in the right direction from Brown, who just says, no, I'm not running Brampton like it's Kazakhstan, when it's pretty clear he is. His corruption knows no bounds, especially with his ethics, the ethics and integrity commissioner. That's crazy. That she is somebody who's directly linked to him, featured in his information. She's charging half, like,
her salary is unethical. Like, her contract
itself is unethical.
Ethics commissioner is unethical. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah, and then she's ruling. Here? She's the one making the ruling, saying, "Oh yeah, I know that totally wasn't Patrick Brown's hockey bag with his name on it."
Yeah. And we need to get away from this as a country, because like Canada can very quickly become Venezuela, and this is how. We saw some of this under Redford as well, but Ontario is particularly bad. I think there's some of this in BC as well, with this absolute madness, these massive salaries for part-time ethics commissioners, contracts being given out for millions of dollars willy-nilly to friends of friends with no accountability metrics. And this is stuff that there would be like serious legal investigations for. You give your friend a sole source contract and you know them, and they cover up some questionable legal conduct as elected officials. And it's just like, we're gonna ask you to resign. Like if I started stealing money from a company and I had a couple of $1 million off in the Cayman and I was flying off, I wouldn't get asked for a resignation and get to go live my life out. That's not how the real world works, but that's how it works for politicians.
Yep. Now, speaking of Venezuela, I think that's a good segue into this next story because we're on a fast track there. We are going to be a very oil-rich country with all of our assets stranded in the ground, and people are not going to be able to fill their gas tank up. And it's already getting bad. So here's the story I've pulled it up in the CBC, courtesy of the Canadian Press, because Globe and Mail has theirs behind a paywall. It says Ottawa proposes to cap oil and gas emissions using industry-specific carbon pricing system. So they say it's industry-specific carbon pricing, as in this is not something that's going to hit you at the pump, but it will because it's going to cut into supply. Because certain things are going to quickly become unprofitable for the companies to proceed with. Certain projects are. And this is just as Alberta is starting to get back on our feet. Isn't this convenient, right? And we were just saying, the emissions caps are coming. They're coming. Look at Holland. They're coming. Well, they naturally, it's Justin Trudeau, so they go after oil and gas first, but farmers are always second, right? So it says Canada aims to cut emissions across all sectors. See, this is where they get the farmers. But they start with they sell it to people saying, oh, we're just going after big oil, they're scary, but they're going to get the farmers too. Canada aims to cut emissions across all sectors by 40 to 45% from 2005 levels by 2030. What year is this? That's very soon. Very soon. This is going to cost thousands of jobs.
Oh, more than thousands. Yeah, this is insane. But the thing, just quickly before you carry on, I just want to talk about that, the sort of industry-specific capping. What you have there is a categorical attack on the West, because it's not going to be automotive manufacturers and steel mills in Hamilton and around Toronto. It's going to be ranchers and oil companies categorically. That is part of this whole regional capping and specific to certain industries. This is once again just an attack on the West, and it's absolutely just maddening to see how overt they are with this. Furthermore, they're going to have these Eastern companies that are in these schemes then selling their cap excesses to Western companies. So they're on a fundamental level hooping these industries as far as telling them they have to reduce, but then they're also saying, oh, by the way, pay more carbon taxes, and also from Eastern companies that we've given a bunch of initiatives to, or hydro or whatever it may be, buy carbon credits off of them. It's astounding.
And sorry, I'm just pulling up the countries Canada imports crude oil from, because CBC reveals itself as very, very CBC here. If you read halfway down, it said the industry has work to do, particularly on the oil side, where Canada's heavy oils require more energy to extract from the ground than places like Saudi Arabia.
Nice places like Saudi Arabia.
Now, so I don't care about the energy inputs to extract from the ground when you are flogging women in the street for showing their faces. I don't care. But whatever it takes to starve that industry, I'm fine with here. I don't even care if it costs more energy per barrel than the barrel itself, as long as we are not lining the pockets of the world's worst human rights abusers. But secondarily, it's interesting that they mentioned Saudi Arabia, but they didn't mention Venezuela, and they sure as hell didn't mention Bakersfield, California, where the energy inputs are much higher than Canada's oil and gas sector, particularly in the oil sands. But this isn't just about oil sands. This is also about the drilling in the eastern slopes with conventional drilling. This hits all of it. So it's not even about the oil sands. It's about crippling Canadian oil and gas while turning a blind eye to Venezuela, Bakersfield, California. And I say good for Bakersfield. I don't care about emissions, but these people say they do. And so why are they turning a blind eye to these places?
Well, and then they're saying, oh yeah, it's all the resources to get it out of the ground. They're like, and what about tanking it over and oil exposure in the oceans? They don't say the cumulative cost and energy as far as getting it over. They just say, oh well, this one sort of niche part of extracting it, it's higher on that one front. So they're They're very selectively choosing what they do. But I mean, the fact that the CBC is like, look, the Saudis, like, look at the model of what we should be following and where we should be buying all our oil from. It's just getting stupid at this point. Like, they're so just in line with Justin Trudeau's rhetoric and justifying buying oil overseas from serial human rights abusers instead of supporting our own industry, which, by the way, we are paying for most of this and have been for a long time with equalization. So they're still continuing to take our money while deriding our industries. They're then taking our money and buying Saudi oil with it, and then criticizing us for how much energy it takes to extract the oil from the ground.
Now, listen to this. Approximately 40% of Canada's refinery needs were met by imports. So 40% of the oil we refine, upgrade in this country, it's imported. Imagine how many Canadian jobs would be created just on the upstream side, in extraction side, if we could get Canadian oil to the Irving refinery, where they are getting oil from Saudi Arabia, Norway, Nigeria, Azerbaijan, and up until a little while ago, the Russian Federation. Now, the bulk of our imports come from the United States, but Saudi Arabia is not far behind. And then it goes Nigeria, not the best place to be a human being. And then after that, Norway. So that Norwegian oil is coming across the North Sea, and it's going to the refinery on the east coast of Canada. So what if we had a pipeline built where we could just, we're already booming in Alberta, or entering into boom times, and we do natural resource extraction here, the best in the world. Imagine the Albertan jobs that would be created just to supply that one oil refinery, and they won't do it. Instead, they're coming after us as we try to pull ourselves out of this Trudeau and Notley caused recession.
Yeah, it's, there's no reason whatsoever, with the exception of maybe our American allies for the sake of nation sort of camaraderie, that we are buying oil from anywhere on this planet at all, period. Like, any government, any federal government that is buying oil from Saudi Arabia is categorically inept. And I apply that in blanket terms. And I include the conservatives in that, because the conservatives are doing it as well. Any politician who is not speaking out against buying foreign oil while we sit on resources while people are suffering, and while our country wants for money and is dealing with recession and all this stuff, is inept. And I state that unapologetically, regardless of which party you belong to. That, as far as anyone concerned about fiscal policy, that is the principal concern for this nation, full stop, on the fiscal front. It doesn't matter. Literally, the minor shifts in spending, all those other things are very secondary to the immense wealth that could be generated by only using Canadian oil in Canada. Politicians need to wake up on this and need to take action on this front. Realistically, other than, cutting some spending, but really nothing else matters economically in this country compared to the wealth that would be generated by that and the jobs that would be generated by that. And
then they wonder why we want to leave. Then they wonder why we want to go.
And there's also, to your point, the human rights considerations. Like, Canada, despite Justin Trudeau's personal conduct and what he does to people and what his guards do to reporters and things like that, Canada is still one of the leaders as far as rights, COVID-19 perhaps being the exception, some of the responses. But compared to Saudi Arabia, even during COVID-19, things were relatively free here compared to there. You certainly didn't see mass executions of people, necessarily imprisonment, certainly, but we shouldn't be feeding into that sort of regime when we have the resources right here. There's no level on which this makes sense other than, guess what? Saudi Aramco made a donation to the Trudeau Foundation or whatever. Other than personal corruption, personal investments, personal interests. And on that front, we really need to start taking serious looks at, obviously, the Trudeau family, very wealthy, but politicians who are gaining immense wealth while they are in office. Like there's massive conflicts of interest, and there just seems to be no regard or cross-examination of that whatsoever.
And
I
you
do
know, we
think
saw
unless you
this, sorry, we saw the
go ahead.
same visceral hate for Canadian oil from Joe
Mhm.
Biden because
No,
I think regardless of whether or not Justin Trudeau was somehow being enriched by all of this and, you know, just based on how slippery he is, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I think it goes further than that. It's a deep cultural bigotry against the West. And
Oh,
you know, we saw it from his dad. It's replicated in him. Progressive politicians have it, I think. We saw it from Biden. Instead of saying, yeah, we'll just finish this almost completely finished Keystone XL, he goes over to Saudi Arabia and begs them to up production. What a weak thing for you to show the world as far as foreign policy goes. But I mean, that's, I think, probably the least of Biden's weakness. I think he's a man in cognitive decline, and I should report the Democrats for elder abuse. But I hate to, I don't want to be the person who tries to get inside the mind of a progressive, but I think it has a lot to do with elitism. You see, in Alberta, you don't have to go to university to make $250,000 a year. You could just be a rig manager. And it's still one of those places where hard work and good choices, putting your head down, you can still make a living with your back and your hand in Alberta, and a damn good living for your family. And I think those elitists in the East and in those progressive circles, they really despise the power that the oil industry gives to blue collar people. They don't like it whatsoever, and they keep trying to starve the industry that gives these people the serfs. It's how the serfs get power, really, is through the oil industry, and that they don't like it one bit.
Well, Justin Trudeau has far more in common with some big oil baron in Saudi Arabia who is happy to abuse people's rights, as we've seen by all of his conduct, than he does with working class people trying to provide for their family. That's why he relates to these people. That's why he likes these people. That's why, likely, and I mean, I'm sure when you look at the net worth of Justin Trudeau before he became leader of this country and after, it's not going to be the accumulated wealth of his salary over those years. It's going to be quite a bit more. That happens with almost every politician who enters leadership on a national level, which is troubling to say the very least. But these people certainly identify far more closely with abusive global leaders than they do with average Joes trying to take care of their family. That's why they do business with these people. It categorically is, not to get into the cultural clash Marxism sort of stuff, but there is this overwhelming malice towards anything Western from Easterners, not all by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly the Ottawa Laurentian elite, who are just malicious. They hate some of their own people, but they're right next door to them and they pay the bills to some extent, so they're willing to put up with them. But they have so much unmerited and directed malice towards the West that, by the way, is often responsible for the wealth and paying their salaries. But it's so unwarranted, but it's so evident because other than bribery or malice, there's no real justification for anything that these folks are doing. It's troubling. I don't know if you have anything else on that. I am hearing in my ear that we are due for an ad.
I was just gonna say that's a great segue into your interview with our friend Tarek, because he is a guy who's not from here, but he came to the West and he fell in love with the West and the freedom and, again, the ethos that hard work and good choices can earn you a great living. And we don't care where you're from. We just care that you're here. And you have a really great interview with Tarek. And he, he's a cowboy from the Middle East who came to Alberta, just fell in love with the place and never left.
Yeah, it's incredible. Let's do an ad, then we'll talk about that after.
Sure, great.
So I absolutely love having the opportunity to chat with you, to chat with our ever-growing audience. But I'd actually love for you to have that opportunity as well. We actually have advertising opportunities available with rebelnews.com. We don't get handouts from the government. We trust on supporters, viewers, and advertisers like you. So instead of folks listening to me in this spot, they could actually be checking out your company, getting information about your business. For more information or to advertise with us, send an email to ads@rebelnews.com.
Yes, that is
That's great.
Tarek's horse. I believe that was Larry Bob. Yeah, but guys, seriously, we'll talk about Tarek's story in a second, but do consider advertising with us. It's one of the ways that we keep the bills on, that we can do some of this incredible work. We obviously have our team in the Netherlands doing the Farmer Rebellion, and we're doing these incredible stories. It does cost a lot to get out there. We aren't getting $1 billion from the government or the $1 million bailouts here and there. We're doing this work and growing and doing very well, and there's definitely an opportunity for you, if you have a brand that you think would align well with Rebel News, just to have your ad pop up in that spot, draw all those eyes. 10, 20,000 people watch this stream, if not more, on a very regular basis. There's tons of opportunity to advertise. So ads at rebelnews.com if you're interested. But yeah,
just before you go on, I just want to stress on your ad there. Our viewers are almost always willing to spend money with a company that isn't woke, that maybe isn't completely ideologically aligned with them, but also doesn't care about your politics. That's me. I don't care if a company agrees with me, but I do care if a company is actively advocating against me or trying to shut me up. And so as a company, if you're looking to advertise and you're one of those companies that says, you know what, we're not in the interest of going woke and going broke. We don't care what the liberals think. We don't care about your politics either. We're probably the right advertising platform for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Thanks.
So getting in this conversation, for people, we've talked to them a few times, but for the latest episode of The Buffalo, which is brought to us by our generous sponsors who are advertising with us, APP, Alberta Prosperity Project, we're going out here and sharing these incredible Western stories. And we've shared Tarek's story before, but maybe not in like complete depth. We kind of touched on the details. He has some political involvement with the Maverick Party and other organizations. But for this story, I wanted to really get his perspective, because something like 10 years ago, he actually showed up as a tourist to the Calgary Stampede and saw rodeo for the first time. Often he'd go on trips to music festivals or whatever, always to some sort of event. And he was watching a Western movie. He's like, heck, I'm going to go see a rodeo. And then he's looking up what's the biggest rodeos on earth. Couple in Vegas, Calgary Stampede. He's like, oh, I'm one of the Calgary Stampede. The Rockies there. I will check it out. The first time he saw a buck come fly, or a bronc come flying out of that chute, he immediately was like, I need to do this. So he saw the hard work. He saw the grit. He saw it. He moved back to Dubai, sold everything, came here, and he jokingly in the video, if you watch it, if you haven't yet, check it out. It's pretty great. He says he bought his Alberta starter pack. I think he went out and bought cowboy boots on day 1, a set of tools on day 2, and a truck on day 3. And he's like, he has like a ranch hand company. He competes in local rodeos. He's on the Airdrie Ag Society. And the incredible thing with his story is he on day 1 when he arrived here, he actually sent an email, I think, or a call to the Airdrie Ag Society, and the president called him right away. They went for coffee. She got him right into it. The first weekend he was in Alberta, he was opening shoots at a local rodeo. They helped him when he bought his first horse. They kind of walked him through everything, and it's incredible just how Albertan that is. This is someone from Dubai, not of this culture, who just was very much an outsider. I don't know if there's anything else in the world where as a complete outsider, you can call in and say, what do I do? And like the president of the local organization is like, it's so important that we get this guy in. So he said that it was the most inclusive, most welcoming community. They didn't care if you were willing to do hard work, you were in. So it's incredible. Lots of us maybe take Stampede for granted. He saw it for what it was and was absolutely blown away. And the man loves the West. I say time and time again, he may be from Dubai. He is as Albertan as they come. It's an incredible Stampede story, but it's incredible to see he's advocating for the West. He says in the video, it took about 5 minutes to see that Alberta was getting a raw deal. So not only is he a Dubai kid turned Alberta cowboy, he's also a political advocate for the West, for Alberta, for these energy resources. Oil and engineering was his background, so he carries on in those fields. But it's truly an incredible story. Really, it is. Whenever I talk to somebody about rodeo, I'm sharing his story. It's just so incredible.
He is everything I know to be true about small town Alberta also. So when you hear people from downtown Edmonton, the NDP progressives, accusing people from rural Alberta of being just a bunch of backwoods hillbilly rednecks that hate Muslims and newcomers. My experience with rural Alberta could
Mhm.
not be further from the truth. It's people who
Okay.
don't know us who think those things about us. We hear that from the Justin Trudeau Liberals, that they have all these anti-racism policies in place, not to deal with the likes of Justin Trudeau, who wears blackface so many times that he lost count, but to deal with small town Alberta. And, you know, Tarek's
That
story
welcome
is a
in.
monkey wrench in their scheme.
Yeah. 100%. You know, even some of the stuff with like, oh, the Nazi flags and stuff. When I was in Milk River, when the guys were down in Coots, I'm sure it was similar in Ottawa. You would have got your teeth rearranged by a trucker if you showed
Yeah.
up with the Nazi flag, and that everything there was completely peaceful and everything. But if someone made a racist remark or was flying a Nazi flag, that's probably one of the thresholds that would have garnered the responses that they were saying these people were violent and everything. It wasn't the case the whole time, but that being overtly racist or discriminating is probably one of the things that would escalate these truckers, these cowboy folks. It's really incredible just how far this went. Tarek makes a joke about all the talk about the color of his neck, but he's never felt, or Albertans' necks. But he's never felt so included, never felt so welcome, never once heard a deriding remark. He jokes that sometimes people, the announcers at rodeos might get his name a bit wrong, but he's like, but that's about the extent of it. He was totally and wholly welcomed into this. And like you said, I just don't think that there is, I've never heard a better story that absolutely undermines everything they would have you believe about these small towns. They're so absolutely down to earth, welcoming, humble. They also, and it's incredible how conservative they are. They don't want to bother you. I was having a burger in a small town somewhere, and there's a big family sitting at a table, and I'm sitting alone. I was between stories, and they're kind of looking over, but every time I'd look, they'd kind of look down. But it was pretty apparent they recognized me, but the dad's kind of saying, look down. At the end, the dad walks over, just says, "Thanks for your work, son," and then he goes back, and the family leaves. They're very like to each their own, and we'll just do our own thing. And if you need a hand, they'll be happy to come there. But yeah, so far from what they would have you believe, and I think that's part of the reason that these Ottawa elites, these politicians, hate them, is because ultimately, push come to shove. Like we saw Milk River Coots, these people band together. Even if you're the kid from Dubai, and you're like, I want to be part of this community. They're like, well, if you're willing to roll up your sleeves, you're in, and you can't beat those types of people. People who come together, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their faith, regardless of what they may like or dislike, but people who band together ultimately as a community, that is the most dangerous thing in the world for overreaching politicians.
Yeah, you know what? On that note, I'll just touch on the Pat King hearing this morning. I was up 6:45 this morning in court because of the time change. With regard to Pat King, his bail hearing was today, and much of what was said in court is covered under a publication ban. So, as opposed to my usual deluge of tweets when I'm covering a court hearing, there was not a lot that I could touch on with regard to evidence or things that may be brought into the trial going forward. But Pat King has been held in jail since February, so 5 months on, I think it's 10, maybe it's 12, but it might be 10. And then subsequently he was charged later on in April with perjury. And so he was released with some pretty serious, yes, okay, it's 16. So initially he had 10 and then others were tacked on, including some perjury later on in April. And I tune into that. I really have concerns about what reality some of these judges are living in when they describe what happened in Ottawa, the street protests with the bouncy castles and the concerts and stuff, and the shinny hockey and the pop-up soup kitchens and picking up garbage and things like that.
And, yeah.
I have a real tough time with judges who describe it as chaos and carnage. And I sit through that all the time. And it's like, did you poke your head outside? Did you go down there? Or are you just relying on several retracted CBC reports? Because the way CBC reports it versus the reality of the people who were there, very much different. I mean, she even commended the police for their not hurting anybody when they were clearing the streets. Well, I think our Alexa Lavoie and Guillaume Roy would probably take umbrage with that, because Guillaume was pepper sprayed in the face as Alexa's videographer. Alexa was shot in the leg with a crowd control pepper canister at close range. That canister hit the ground and broke, which then pepper sprayed her eyes, and she was struck with a baton. But this is not
Not to
something the
mention
police
old
are being,
ladies on mobility scooters and
old ladies getting
guns being
trampled,
pointed at people.
people
Andrew
being
Lawton got
dragged out of
sprayed.
things. Yeah, Andrew Lawton, like, it's just it's like they're commenting on things that they haven't, I don't think they have the full breadth of information there.
And
They're only relying on certain sources.
How does it happen though? Like, how can a judge just be overtly factually wrong? And it is this like new. It's like the same thing with the political class. And I understand there's protections as far as judges, because they often deal with very sort of serious things and they don't want personal repercussions. But I mean, if part of your ruling is a factually errant account of the events upon which your ruling is based, that how is that? I mean, these are going to be thrown away in appeals processes eventually. But how as a judge can you state something that's overtly contradictory to the truth?
Yeah. I don't know how much I can say about the conditions and King's condition while he was in jail, but that was a consideration for releasing him. It's terrible. I just couldn't believe what I was hearing. And it just, like, you wouldn't wish it on your worst enemy. And I've been a staunch critic of Pat King. He dislikes me. I have no personal feelings about him, but I know that he doesn't like me. I've debunked some of his baloney. And I know Ezra has too, when he said that he got the Alberta Health Services to admit that they had no evidence of isolation of the coronavirus while he was self-representing himself in court on a lockdown ticket. And basically, Alberta Health Services said they have no material evidence pertaining to his case, as in this is irrelevant. This is irrelevant to your lockdown ticket, and we don't care, and we've got there's nothing to show here. Not that we don't have evidence of isolation of the coronavirus. It's that whatever evidence we do have, it's not relevant to whatever you're arguing here today, and you didn't file the subpoena properly anyway. And so I pulled those transcripts after he went on an American news outlet and made those claims that went viral. And I thought, that doesn't sound right. And I did the work. We got the transcripts. I literally just read them and said, here, he's got a gross misunderstanding of the legal terminology here, which is why you hire a lawyer.
We ran it by several lawyers too, just to make sure that we do this all the time. There's frequently stories that come to us and they sound incredible, or like, oh, this is the smoking gun, this is the coup de grace to put an end to all of this. If something is too good to be true, what we usually do is scrutinize it, as journalists should do. This it'd be great if the CBC or some of these other organizations tried it. And sometimes these stories, like Sheila said, turn out to be factually errant, and there's something fundamentally wrong with them, a misunderstanding, whether it be overtly lying or unintentionally misunderstanding. There's a degree of judgment within that, but we'll often run it by lawyers and say, does this sound judicially correct? And then we bring it to you guys factually. Sorry, but carry on.
Yeah. No, and I just, a lot of people were mad at me for that. Why would you do that? People need hope. Yeah, people need hope, but not false hope. That's just snake oil. And I think it's unkind it's unkind to keep people in a sweet, sweet lie when they need to live in reality. And, whether or not it was intentional or otherwise, when I contacted both the journalist and King to say, like, maybe you guys just misunderstand this. I realized that some of the language they use in court is difficult. I court report all the time, so I know that it is difficult as a lay person. But would you mind correcting the record? And instead I got, people mad at me for that. All that is to say, none of that matters. This guy's been in jail for 5 months. 5 months. Yeah. Tell me, child sex offenders, murderers get bail. He doesn't get bail? 5 months? It's whatever you feel. This is unjust. He's been released, though, today after a 2-day bail hearing last week with some pretty strict conditions. It's a lot like house arrest. Well, it is basically house arrest. So huge bail up front, no contact with other organizers, multiple sureties involved on this, checking in on him. No social media. He has to close down his website. No participation in any anti-government protests. A 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. He's basically only allowed out for medical treatment and to go to work. And he's like, that's it. And that wasn't good enough either for Karimjee. He's the Crown who is also on the Tamara Lich file. He wanted that, because some of the criticism had leveled at him because of the treatment of Tamara Lich was, what are you doing? Spending all these taxpayer dollars to fly out 3 or 4 cops in a private jet to grab Tamara Lich from Medicine Hat and bring her all the way back to Ottawa? That seems a little ridiculous over a photo. So to address that, he says, okay, well, if Pat King breaches, Pat will have to turn himself in to the Ottawa police immediately. Like, if you breach and that we've decided you're in breach, you have to get yourself back to Ottawa immediately, or you're in breach again. Pat King's basically indigent at this point. He hasn't been able to work. He hasn't been able to see his kids. I don't know if his medical conditions now will even allow for that. What are you doing? Making somebody responsible for the cost of their own arrest? Maybe act reasonably before you breach someone on a minor thing. Maybe leave him in the medicine or the Edmonton jail or wherever he ends up, because he's going to be shipped immediately back to Alberta. Keep him there. Have him appear remotely. But flying a bunch of cops out in a private jet to bring them all back to Ottawa, that seems a little ridiculous. But I thought it was interesting that was the solution. That was the thing that Karimjee thought people found objectionable, was the cost to the taxpayer, that it should be on the, I don't know, the defendant, when it was, no, the resources you're expending on this minor BS. That's what people was mad, but he didn't get that.
There's going to need to be, after this all settles and all the God willing appeals processes, which on some of these fronts, it seems probable with Arthur Pawlowski and some of the other cases, Chris Scott, the appeals processes are likely leaning towards partial or complete success in overturning some of the things we've seen before. There's going to need to be massive judicial reviews. I don't know how exactly that's going to carry out, but it's absolutely essential when Tamara Lich is being held now. And for anyone, I don't understand whatsoever. For those who don't recall, she took a photo with somebody that she wasn't allowed to have communication with unless her legal counsel was present, at a dinner being hosted by her legal counsel, with all of her legal counsel present. Some of them might be in the picture even. At face value, she didn't breach the terms of her bail by any metric, because she was at an event with her lawyers, with her legal counsel. And she's being held regardless. This is such nuanced, nitty-gritty stuff. You literally have like serial sex offenders getting caught around playgrounds again while on bail, and they're hauled in, tossed before a judge in like 12 hours, and the judge is like, don't do that again, we're going to let you go. But if you
and
do
they
this,
reoffend while on bail and get bail again.
Yeah, it's insane. It is absolutely monstrous. And for judges watching, some certainly do, like, give your head a shake. Like, look at reality. Look at some of your other cases that you're working on, and juxtapose them for just a moment with the prosecution and persecution that is going on. And I think persecution is becoming a more apropos term of some of these people. They are going to be due, if justice is done, immense settlements when all of this comes to light, when all of this comes to fruition. And I hope these people, they've been so abused, so derided, I hope they don't, I'm not offering legal advice by any stretch, but I hope they don't sign off on time served and you get to move on with your life, because this is categorical injustice. And if this continues just to carry on as it is, the judicial system will not remain. It can't be trusted. People will not look at it the same way whatsoever. That started with the auto police. It started with the arrest of Pastor Arthur Pawlowski, James Coates, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse. This is targeted political harassment. Full stop, plain and simple. Really
Well,
quickly,
and
we're running out of
yeah, there's just one
Go
more
ahead,
thing I
sorry.
want to mention from the bail hearing.
Of
Um,
course, yeah.
he cannot engage in media, any sort of media interviews. And again,
Yeah.
I find much of what Pat King says in general, objectionable. I think he gets his facts wrong almost constantly. I think that he misleads people for clicks and likes. But do I think his tongue should be cut out? Not at all. And I think that's
No.
the difference between our side and the left. Is if someone says something I disagree with, I just don't listen. But
Yeah.
they want him silenced. He can't even do media interviews to talk about the conditions that he faced in jail and what it did to him. That's outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous. Now, I know why his lawyer agreed to this condition, because she obviously just wants him to shut up. But that's not the point. The point is he should be able to tell the world what happened to him in there. That's
Yeah.
the point.
Yeah, this is the stuff of non-democratic nations.
Exactly.
Oh, I'll tell you what, we'll let you go, but you can't tell anybody what happened to you. What are you hiding? What was
Or you
happening in
go
your
back
prison?
to jail, or you go back
Yeah.
to the jail. If you tell everybody what happened to you the
What
first
we
time,
did to you.
we're going to stick you back in there.
Yeah, it's sick. Yeah, it's absolutely wild. Wild to see what's happening in this country. And again, I said this off the bat, but if you're wondering how a country like Venezuela goes from one of the bastions of freedom in South America with the fourth highest economy in the world to absolute communist hellhole that's falling apart.
Eating the zoo animals.
Yeah, eating zoo animals. And I think something like the population lost 20% of their average body weight. Not
Yeah.
that they were overweight to start with, but
Yeah.
the population is starving. It's leadership like this, it's corrupt judiciaries like this, it's politicians like Pat Brown that lead us down this troubling path. We were talking bad judge. I want to talk good judge for just a couple of seconds here. I know we have to wrap soon. I'm sure you've got a busy day. But a judge blocks the Biden directive allowing trans athletes to compete in women's sports. Some sensibility that protects people's well-being. We've seen trans athletes absolutely dominating in women's sports without really anyone daring to stand in competition with them. Especially we've seen some of the more egregious cases with MMA where people have been absolutely female athletes particularly beaten to a pulp. Powerlifting competitions, cycling competitions, whatever it may be. Of course, there was efforts, concerted efforts to prevent that. Swimming organizations saying we're not going to allow this to happen anymore. There has to be thresholds. There has to be measures. Of course, Biden, never one to address anything important and always one to weigh in on progressive politics, made effectively an order to allow people to compete wherever they want. A judge now sort of interjecting and preventing that from moving forward. So there are a few sane, good ones out there, to say the very least.
Yeah, and I learned that about public sector bureaucrats last week. There are a couple within Canadian Heritage, which oversees Sports Canada, who have tried and tried and tried to be the voice of reason on this issue in Canada. And the Liberals continue to ignore them, and pray for those people. They're probably in a re-education camp somewhere, just getting re-educated and diversity trained to death somewhere after their colleagues told on them. But I've read the briefing notes, and we know you're out there, and I appreciate what you're trying to do for our daughters. You're putting your careers at great risk. Okay, let's get to some of these chats, because we're past the top of the hour already. So we've got Utibercy gives us $1. How dare he say he didn't do anything wrong? I hope he'll be kicked out in October. I just, and it's funny how he's like, I signed up all these people to the Conservative Party of Canada who feel disaffected. You signed up low liability, low interest. Those aren't even conservative voters. Those are just people who bought a membership. If you can't retain them after you go, you're probably not, they probably weren't conservatives, because they don't even share the most basic conservative values.
Well, and we know that there is, and Patrick Brown is someone who did this. There's certain cultural communities where their leaders of the cultural community will say, "Oh, this is the guy we're backing. He's kind of got
Yep.
our interests at heart," and they'll sell. And this is some of the sketchy stuff where you see maybe one credit card used to process a bunch, or at least they're like, "Oh, we've pre-gathered the funds. Here it is." And suddenly you have
Yeah.
hundreds of memberships being sold to one community. Those people, and I mean, we've seen it with Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, where they say, "Oh, we're told by our faith leaders to be here." I don't know if I'm really going to support them, or they're heckling the people, in fact, but there was a lot of that. We saw that the leadership debates in Edmonton as well, where these communities kind of band together, and then that Patrick Brown, lots of his sold memberships that he advocated for were bulk sales of that nature that people in other places, including Jason Kenney here in Alberta, were criticized for doing.
We saw this firsthand. I think it was in a David Menzies video. It might have been in a Dakota video, actually.
Yeah.
It was a Patrick Brown event, and they were asking the people, like, why do you support Patrick Brown? And he said, I don't. My mosque just told me to be here. I'm actually a PPC voter. Like, I thought,
this isn't
that's about right.
this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is like bona fide fact. This is something.
No, they tell us on
like,
camera. They're
yeah.
like, no, the mosque told us to be here, but I actually am a PPC voter.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I don't think that people who are in cultural conservative communities who tend to be social conservatives as well, I don't think Patrick Brown would be their guy to start with. So anyway, Aaron Burton, 32, gives us $10 and says, I love how Patrick Brown brought his wife and kids to the podium. Sympathy points. Keep up the great work, Rebel. You know, I've got nothing but pity for his wife and kids. And sure, he brought them there for optics' sake, but on the flip side, politicians do that all the time. When they do announcements about their future, they always bring their family to show, like, hey, I'm a family guy. I'm doing this for my kids. That's why I care about the future. So it is, it's cynical, but everybody does it, not just him.
Yeah. And lovely family, very friendly. His wife
Yeah.
waved and smiled at
Cutest
events,
buttons.
and it was very,
Yeah.
So lovely family. We're not going to throw any shade their way whatsoever. God bless them.
Nope. I generally leave the families right out of everything. But they seem really nice.
Yeah.
Fraser gives us $5 over the weekend. Another crazy bee shot 3 people. Thank God there was an armed civilian that shot the bee dead. Yeah. Again, armed civilian stops a bad guy, takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun. That's always the case. So that's why I'm such a critic of progressives who want me to outsource my safety to the likes of the Uvalde police, you know? Like, if we learned anything from Uvalde, it's that maybe the police aren't going to help you.
Stop everything. Everyone, wait a second. I need to go get some hand sanitizer. So everyone watching, just stop, because I'm going to go do that right now instead of carrying on with Stream with You, is the logic of that police force.
Yeah.
I mean, they're looking at their phones and doing everything except intervening to save lives. It's
Arresting
embarrassing.
unarmed moms who are going to go in and just do it with their bare hands. Arresting them. Yeah.
And then wasn't it a border guard who eventually showed up and stormed
a
through?
border guard who was at the barber shop.
And borrowed the barber's shotgun.
Borrowed the barber's shotgun because he got a text message from his wife. And you know what? Again, I said this to Juan before, but the Texas border guards are the best law enforcement agency in the entire country. They've got a compassion for the people who are being trafficked across the border. But boy, when called upon to act, no matter what, they come, they help, and they are the front line in defending the homeland. They really are.
Well, and this goes back to that note on accountability for politicians and judges. It has to happen with police too. When you have Ottawa police like laughing about putting their jack boots on and running over ladies on mobility scooters and pointing guns in people's faces who are literally parked and maybe not even involved in the protest, those people need to be held to account. Those people who refuse to take action to save lives, that was their job and duty at that time. They all need to be fired immediately. But it won't happen because they're part of that class that doesn't face accountability.
Right. Alberta Separatist gives us 5 libraries. Politicians need to be licensed like truckers, electricians, plumbers, lawyers, doctors, inspectors, and every other profession we trust. I don't even care about licensing because people want a journalism license, and a journalism is a thing you do and not a guild you join. But
I think they should be licensed as a trade worker in order to be a politician.
sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah. You know what? If you're going to license other people,
World
you should be
experience.
licensed too. Yep.
Well, to be in these other departments, you need like life experience and to prove you're
Yeah.
a sane and sensible person. So experience more than a drama teacher, say, to be leader of this country. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea.
On the flip side, isn't that what the electoral process and the campaign is all about? Making that case to the public as opposed to some
Yeah.
licensing agency?
True.
Because
Yeah,
who
it
would
is.
be on the licensing agency but your fellow liberals,
Me.
right?
I'll be on it.
They never pick like the people you want making these decisions for these sorts of
No.
things. Look at the PPG, Parliamentary Press Gallery, or the Alberta Legislature Press Gallery having witch hunts for for journalists they don't like, right? Like you don't want to give these people the power, but
No.
yeah, I don't know. My solution is always not more bureaucracy, but wouldn't it be nice if they got a taste of their own medicine sometimes? And then the politicians can lose their license for not doing their job, for lying or corruption. They also need to be able to be sued. Well, they can be, just not
For sure.
when just not when they're speaking like in the House. Then you have
Yeah.
parliamentary privilege. January 777 gives us $5. If politicians care so much about environmental impacts, why are they dropping cyanide and heavy metals on us globally in the form of chemtrails? Okay. Fraser gives us $1 talking about products I bought today. I bought the Justin Castro t-shirt. Can't wait to wear it proudly at our next rally. We have
Great
some
shirt.
great fun new shirts in the Rebel News store at rebelnewsstore.com. I think we have this is one of my favorites. Come and take it. The church shirt. That's on my list. I just got my promo code to order some new t-shirts and I'm filling
Klaus
my
Schwab stuff.
Yeah, there's Klaus Schwab stuff, there's trucker stuff, there's farmer stuff, there's church stuff. So all those civil
That
liberties
beef
that
shirt
we
with
care
the
about.
little steer is so good. I love that.
I
shirt.
love it. I love it.
It's one of my
Yeah.
faves.
I got compliments when I was out and about wearing that shirt. And then we've got one from Alberta Dawn. Gives us $2. Where's Jason Kenney on this nitrogen fertilizer issue? Western premiers need to say hell no. The West, we'll see how it works out in Ontario and Quebec, and then we'll talk. Yeah. And then January 777 gives us $2. When Trudeau gave $1 billion to the provinces to initiate the vaccine protocol, 10 provinces, $100 million per province. Where did the Alberta funds go, Jason Kenney? Well, it just went into general coffers. And actually, I think it was $1 billion per province, was it not?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah,
I think it was
so.
$1 billion per province if you brought in, it was to support the implementation of the vaccine passport system. And I think it just went into general revenue.
And this goes to how insanely high the spending is. I did ask Travis Taves about the $4 billion in spending allegedly missing over COVID response mechanism, supplies, all that stuff. He did assure me that there is an update coming and everything is accounted for. So the money is not missing as original report stated. But $1 billion is not a lot of money, even in a province of 4 million people in this day and age. They spend unimaginable sums of money. And that's part of the problem, to be honest.
Sure it is. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of the show. Adam, thanks so much for coming along on this wild ride. And, we had some breaking news to cover off at the very beginning. I want to thank very much our sponsor today, the Alberta Prosperity Project, for all of your Western independence needs. Head on over to their website. And they also have a very enthusiastic sort of social media following on their Facebook page. They do a lot of live broadcasts of their events. So if you can't make it out to one, you can see the re-recording over there. Thanks to everybody at home who tunes in to watch the show every day. Thanks to everybody in the studio in Toronto and behind the scenes everywhere else, really throughout the world. We're a global company now who does the things that they need to do to make sure that our stream is available for you to watch. Thanks to everybody who chipped in to keep the lights on over here at Rebel News and again around the world in our specific locations. I think I'm here tomorrow. I'll see everybody tomorrow. I think I'm on air with David Menzies. And as David Menzies always says, stay sane.
So I've always wanted to be a people helper. I've always wanted to help people. So naturally firefighter and EMT, that just fell into my wheelhouse. But over the last few years, I've noticed, especially with the Calgary department, it's turning more into a corporate business unit. And it's not about serving the needs of the citizens. Sure, the guys, like my brothers, we're there, rain or snow, we're there for the people. But sometimes it just feels like the agenda is getting pushed from administration to be more of a business unit. And I don't like the way the direction is going. So I've